So tonight, to start our fall season, I am thrilled to introduce you to tonight's speaker, Irene Nizzero, a very good friend of mine, a very dear friend of mine who I met while attending University of Windsor in Ontario. We have a bit of history together, but since Irene's Windsor days, she's taught psychology at Cambrian College in Sudbury, where she specialized in positive psychology. Several years ago, she also became interested in coaching, eventually achieving her coaching certification in 2015. She now, as an executive coach, works mostly with new executives and managers. Fun fact, as well as being an accomplished coach and teacher, Irene also has a 4th degree black belt in Goju Ryu Karate and ran a marathon in her 50s. Tonight, Irene will be sharing her expertise and personal experience around the pros and cons of being goal-driven, as well as exploring different kinds of goals and their outcomes. Because when all is said and done, not all goals are created equally. And on that note, let's get rolling. Over to you, Irene.
Thanks so much, Tracy. I really appreciate the warm welcome. It's just such a pleasure to be here. So let me get started with a couple of observations about how tonight should go, all things being equal. I would like to invite people to, in the chat, seeing as we've got a pretty responsive group, it looks like, list 1 to 3 goals that you are currently working on or thinking about working on. And we'll just let those scroll up through the chat. And I know that a few people will be kind of keeping their eyes on them and hopefully grabbing 1 or 2 that seem interesting, perhaps unique, and perhaps just popular. Maybe there are a lot of people with, some similarities in their goals. So have fun doing that. And in the meantime, I'm hoping I can share a bit of the format that I had in mind for tonight as well. So we're going to put a bit of framework around this concept of goals, why it is that we feel like we need them. Okay. We'll look at what alternatives do we have to goals, because as Tracy said, they're not all created equally and sometimes they're actually problematic. So we'll take a look at that idea as well. And as part of that following of an alternative, I've got a 5-step process that I'll expand on for you through the course of the rest of this hour. So my understanding is that I've got about to the top of the next hour to finish sharing my information, after which we'll have some Q&A. And as Tracy said, though, I am happy to have people ask clarifying questions or seek information around some of the stuff that I'm talking about. If it's just you really want to hear more about what I'm saying at the time, I'm happy to do that. Otherwise, we will have some Q&A at the end. All right. So with that, let's get going. So I'm going to take a look at some of these goals in a bit, but please keep them coming. So one of the things that you've got on your worksheet, and by the way, I understand that Tracy and her team at Sophia have been kind enough to share with you the worksheet that I had prepared for tonight's talk. And at the top of it, you should see a graphic that speaks to the acronym PERMA, P-E-R-M-A, starting with the P at the top of positive emotion. And what this represents is a very popular way of capturing what a life well lived is based on. These are the 5 pillars of well-being, according to Martin Seligman. You'll also see at the end of your worksheet is a list of references that I'll be commenting on and bringing into the conversation tonight at intervals. So Martin's at the top of that list. If you really want to get a sense of what positive psychology is all about, his book Flourish is wonderful. I just want to make sure, in case people aren't familiar with positive psychology, and I find a real mix with some audiences, people know it, other people don't. It's not the yellow smiley face. That just makes me go crazy when I hear people capturing it that way, or the idea of positive thinking. It's really so much more than that. So positive psychology really looks at how we can create an environment to be at our very best. So how do we end up with someone like Terry Fox in the world? And if we admire and like what Terry Fox represents, how do we create environments that encourage people to be at their best like that? To take a horrible situation, to take maybe one of life's worst challenges, and not just bounce back from it. He went to a level that's beyond where he was before he got cancer. So it's really that's sort of an idea. So positive psychology looks at what are the variables, what are the factors that contribute to people rising above situations, or just even bouncing back from very difficult situations, or what makes an optimist? What makes someone who is just quintessentially cheerful all the time? What contributes to those characteristics, for example? So that's the study of positive psychology. It is science-oriented, data-driven, fact-based. It's not conjecture. It's not, anecdotal. So I just really want that to be clear about positive psychology. And I draw a lot of what I'll talk about tonight from that field. So if you look at PERMA, you see that the A represents achievement or accomplishment. They're pretty much synonymous in that paradigm. And so we think that we really want to achieve and accomplish things. We know that helps us feel a sense of satisfaction. Sometimes it brings us a sense of meaning. It's validating. It has all sorts of feel-good kinds of connections to it when we check a box or scratch something off our list of things to do. The bucket list is a very popular concept. So we know that goals have their purpose. There's a reason we like to feel like we've done things, and sometimes things that are hard or unusual or out of the ordinary. So my argument today, though, is that goals aren't really the only way that we can gain that sense of accomplishment or achievement. And that they, as I suggested earlier, they are at times quite problematic. So let's talk a little bit about why that might be so. Unfortunately, a lot of times people set a goal, they've got their sights set on a particular outcome that they're waiting to get to, or looking forward to getting to. And they have this sense that, well, I'll feel better about things. I'll feel better about myself. I'll be happier. I'll feel more successful when I achieve this thing. And so this in itself becomes a bit of a difficulty, as you can appreciate, because we achieve some goals, we don't achieve others. And how does that then reflect back on us? How does that make us feel when we don't manage to achieve these particular goals that we have set for ourselves? And we know there are all sorts of reasons why we don't achieve them. So, we've probably heard people say things like, oh, I'll just feel so much better when I lose another 10 pounds. Or I'll feel so much better when I'm in this new job. My life can begin when I can get rid of this and get into this new job. There may be elements of truth to those. I'm not suggesting otherwise. But unfortunately, people sometimes kind of put their living on hold in order to just strive for that goal and don't appreciate what they're accomplishing in the process of achieving the goal. And that's the piece I'd like us to pay more attention to. A goal is really a point in time. This is another sort of problematic piece. So let's say you've got that goal of getting the promotion. Yay, got the promotion. I worked so hard. I did all the things that they wanted me to do. I was really in touch with the leaders of our organization, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm here now. Like, great. And now what? Or, I mean, there are some options here, but the other one that's so popular is, losing the weight. Yay, you've lost the weight. Now what? Or you've run the marathon, or you've done whatever. And then what happens after that box is checked off is the other piece of it. People like James Clear, author of Atomic Habits, he's written a lot that I really like and we'll be bringing into this conversation today too, say things like, if you have set the goal as the be all and end all, but haven't really clarified what the steps are or the processes that you need to put in place to secure that as an ongoing behavior, chances are good you're going to revert back to your former patterns. And this is where the problems start. So it's a challenge to think in terms of the process. We really want that endpoint. We're very accustomed to it, and it's very much part of our culture. But in reality, it's really so much more about the process. I want to use another example that he brings into his work. Think about elite athletes. There probably aren't too many of them among us. Maybe there are, but we know that they have a certain discipline, a certain system for staying at the top of their game, quite literally. He says if they were all just about the goal, every pro tennis player would have her sights on Wimbledon, but only one of them comes away with the trophy. So we know it's not just about the prize. That's certainly a motivator for some of them, but it's about what they've learned by way of what kind of dedication, what kind of routine, what kind of regimen will really serve them. And those are probably processes and practices that they'll keep with them, at least in part, for years and years after the tennis circuit is all over. It's that structure, that repetition, and James Clear would say the habit that they develop of certain practices that really lend themselves to being at that level. So the way that we have maybe achieved goals in the past, and we say, yeah, but that was really good, I had a great experience from it, etc. No doubt about it, and it does infuse our brains with tons of dopamine, which feels good, by the way. But where you really benefit from those long-term goals that you may have established and successfully gotten to is that you've probably also laid down a whole set of patterns, whether habits, routines, practices that you've continued even beyond the achievement of that goal. So let's get into some examples that might be helpful here. And by the way, this is the quote, one of the money quotes I think that James Clear has come out with from Atomic Habits. You don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. So he's about habits and systems. So when you put steps and plans and procedures in place so that you are sustaining the kind of behavior that will contribute to where you want to get to in life, that's where success comes from, as opposed to pinpointing a particular moment in time. I hope I've kind of made that clear. So it's not necessarily you're going to abandon your goals. It's more about let's look at the process that's involved in getting there and the things that will, whether or not there's a point in time or just a new way of being, that it's the processes that we're really going to pay more attention to and how to create those and establish those. So let's see here. So finding a new job, these are some of the, or a more inspiring job. Lose or gain weight, start a small business. These are phenomenal. Save money for travel, stay calm in tough situations. Wow. Start a facilitated conversational meetup group. Love it. There's some real creativity here and really interesting plans afoot. So some of these are long term, obviously, things that you want to establish and sort of have them continue over time. I'm thinking about this facilitated conversational meetup group. Love that idea. And here's what I can say about that. If we were to use that example as our goal, our topic goal for the next little bit, one of the things that occurs to me is that someone wanting to set that up is going to do an awful lot of planning, organizing, strategizing, marketing, etc. And because of the multiple steps involved, obviously being very intentional and clear about those steps is going to be crucial. And this can really map on to a lot of the other goals that were mentioned as well. But the very first step in the whole process that's really crucial is to be clear about what you want, where you want to get to. And we call this, in coaching especially, we call this, not usually with clients, it lives in the coach's head, a desired future state. So what will it look like when you're there? What will be different for you? What will have changed for you? What will you have learned along the way? And who will you be in this new situation? Okay. So there are all kinds of motivators that we can draw on. Some people think that threats or warnings or potential punishments, these kinds of things, and unfortunately we're hearing a lot of this lately with the pandemic. This will happen if you don't go get vaccinated, et cetera, et cetera. So there are like threats involved. The unfortunate thing is that these don't tend to work real well. And I think we've probably seen that the numbers aren't changing a whole lot just based on now the passports that have become a popular sort of barrier to living a lot of your life. And I please understand that I'm not making or taking a position on the vaccine. I'm talking about the dynamic that has, that has emerged here. Richard Boyatzis, I've also mentioned his book, Helping People Change, talks a lot about what happens in our brains when we strive for something that we ourselves genuinely want, that we can picture, that we can envision in great detail, that we really and truly desire, as opposed to something that we are told we should want, or voluntold to pursue, or forced to pursue. If we don't find ways to turn those into elements that really matter to us and that we value, it's going to be a pretty long, hard haul, as it turns out. The centers in the brain that have to do with choice and creativity and thought processes actually start to close down when we're told we should do something. On the other hand, when we're given the opportunity to explore what really truly matters, what our heart's desire is, our creativity centers, our learning centers actually open up. So this is based on neurology, neuroscience. So Boyatzis and his colleagues have explored this at some length, and he's not alone. There are many others, but I like his work the best. I also find it the most accessible. So that's your starting point. What does it look like when I get where I want to be? And really and truly, your first step should be to create that vision for yourself with as much detail as you can possibly create, as you can possibly incorporate into that vision. Okay? The second piece is to decide and be clear about why you want this thing. What's behind that? So in coaching circles, we also talk a lot about the thing behind the thing. It happens so often that people will come for a coaching conversation and they say, yeah, here's what I need. And we sort of do a bit of drilling down, and I ask a bunch of questions, and almost always there's something even bigger behind that. And it's that when that piece becomes clear, so many other things fall into place. And I can also tell you from personal experience, from what I've learned through talking with others, that if there isn't a really powerful why behind the what that you want, it's harder to sustain that process of getting where you want to go. I'm just looking for reactions. Any sort of thumbs up, thumbs down on that? Okay, some people are advanced enough to be using the reaction buttons. I love it. Okay, super. Thank you for that. All right. So how do you sort of explore that? The work of Simon Sinek is amazing in this respect. He has fashioned his concepts of start with why. That's the name of his book. He's got a great workbook as well called Find Your Why. It's a companion to Start with Why, and I have used both extensively. It can be used absolutely on a personal level as well. And for any of you sort of starting to do that kind of search or exploration, or maybe already in the thick of it, Simon Sinek's work is a really great aid for that. One of the things that we know is true as well is that intrinsic versus extrinsic motivators make a huge difference. So if we are looking at what it is that we want, we need to also check in with why. So if I go back to this meetup group, the facilitated meetup group, which I'm also kind of fascinated by that as a concept. I'm curious to know, and you don't have to answer, but I'm just going to throw it out here. What's the motivator there? What will it bring you, the person wanting to start this group? Is there maybe a sense of connection? That's a pretty powerful one. And in and of itself, that's a really good thing. Here's the sad truth about a lot of what, and I bet Tracy would have some things to say about this too. Money as a motivator in and of itself, probably not the most enduring one that's out there. It is by definition an extrinsic motivator. Tracy, you want to chime in on that? I kind of am catching you off guard here.
No. I've been writing all kinds of questions. I don't know if money's an extrinsic motivator. It depends what the person is associating it with, I guess. And, as you've been talking, Irene, one of the key things that just keeps living in me that I keep wanting to ask about is, and why I brought you in, was because of the tension that I personally experience between the goal and, like you say, this future state versus acceptance of myself right now. Mm-hmm. And when it comes to money, money's the one thing that I've had so many conversations and experiences with that it's like it's my collateral. It's the stuff that I know. And the thing that I've seen about money is that the people who manage to change their monetary state and do it permanently accept exactly where they are today. It's the exact opposite of what everybody thinks. The real deep kind of wealth is when people go, I have enough, regardless of where they're at, rather than I need to be something else. I used to talk a lot about the sense of deficiency, and the best way to repel wealth, the best way to repel relationships, the best way to repel the things I want is to come from a position of deficiency, which is why I like changing how my body is from a place of shame. It's so temporary. Changing my financial state because I'm humiliated. Changing anything because somebody outside told me that I'm not good enough, or something inside of me said that. And so that's why this whole thing is so interesting to me, because money, when people get a hold of what they really want to feel, is a sense of security. And they just take one extra step and they think about, they redefine that money, and that's where you came up with the why. But the why to me has to be something pretty deep. It's just like, what I'm seeking from this is this. What I'm seeking from winning Wimbledon is this. And I'm just, like trying to figure this out as a person who has had a lot of goals, but also has spent a lot of time feeling like a failure. So I've succeeded and I have failed a lot. And I've had the subsequent, depressions and things because I haven't achieved those things. So this whole topic to me, between now and the future, and the present state versus future state, I don't have that much to add, except I've seen from money that people that go, I have enough, and they start chilling with that, and they're just like, wow, I've got a roof over my head. Now a lot of the things that I say about this is also, the group here all have a roof over their head. I have worked in populations where deficiency has to be identified, and I respectfully say that that's a different way to work. Because if you are on the street with your kid on a sidewalk with an umbrella and that's your only shelter, that is a state of deficiency. However, I have seen people, even from that state, be happy that they have the umbrella. They're happy that it's just raining and not also windy. And those are the people that seem to attract the next step for themselves. Anyways, I'll be quiet. That's a lot of points.
It's all good.
I'm writing stuff down because this is really an alive topic for me.
Awesome. I look forward to hearing what you have at some point along the way anyway. So I don't disagree with anything you said, of course. The points that I think are so important about what you say is the connection to money, what significance it has. In which case, in and of itself, that's a different conversation than I think just sort of, here's $5, go do this thing, right? But yes, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing all those insights. I also want to bring us back to the point you made about being happy with who I am today. The being happy with who I am today doesn't stop me from continuing to strive for more, however. Is that a distinction that, because there's always room for growth and learning and changing in ways that continue to hone skills and abilities and perspectives and so forth. One of my top strengths is love of learning. And so if I stop learning, I'm in trouble. This is not good for me. And often that means growing and changing. So it's not so much out of a place of dissatisfaction with where I am. It's excitement about what more I can be, or who I can continue to grow to be, if that makes sense. You're on mute. Tracy, you're on.
To me, that was a very important distinction, because that still to me is coming from a place of sufficiency and love of learning, you said, as opposed to I feel stupid and I need to learn something.
Absolute.
Right? It's more like you're saying, I just love it. I love to learn. Just like I love being rich. I just want, I love how I am. And you have this place of openness to availability to
exactly
maybe.
Exactly. So we can look at some of the populations that people like Richard Boyatzis work with extensively. I mean, he's working with top level CEOs, and he still speaks with these people in the context of improvement. So I got to imagine that people at that level of responsibility and authority within an organization have to feel fairly confident about who they are and what they're able to offer. He talks about the real self and the ideal self. So I always look at the gap. So here's where I am today. Here's where I want to get to. And it's not, as you've said, that there's something wrong with who I am today. It's just that I think this next version of me can be even more fun to experience, right? So start, and that's the whole premise of coaching too. So we aren't fixing anything that's broken. We're helping people continue to move forward. Okay. All right. So let's carry on to then just to be clear though about the intrinsic and extrinsic motivators, because I want to bring it to an example that I think some other people of a goal that other people talked about that had to do with gaining or losing weight. It's often the case that people will hear that they need to lose weight from their physicians because there are health implications to the weight loss and that there are risks if it doesn't happen. And of course, this is one of those instances where the doctor says you should lose some weight. And for the person who maybe hears the message and recognizes that, okay, that makes a lot of sense. Right now, I'm just not feeling it. The challenge then becomes, how do you turn it into something that can be an intrinsic motivator? And if there is the chance of sort of imagining that future self as the healthier version, then all kinds of images start to become apparent, right? So it, in many cases, can be things like, I want to be here for my kids and grandkids. I want to have enough energy to get through the day. I find myself struggling sometimes to get through my days and have enough energy. I want to be able to walk to the bus stop without being winded. So things that start to be clear, and it's like, yeah, what would it be like if in fact I could live that into that version of myself? And then it becomes something that's internally driven as opposed to the doctor said this. That may be the catalyst, but we can take those kinds of pieces of information and turn them into something of value to us, first and foremost. Okay, so that's your second step. I'm just looking at time. I think I'm good. The third step is to start to put the plan in place to make it happen. So this is where you're going to create systems or habits or plans that will help to making some lasting change. So you need to start with what you need by way of resources. The support in planning, scheduling is often a really great idea. So if you're thinking about healthier eating, for example, ideally you're going to get rid of the foods that don't fit that bill for you, right? To remove the temptations, if you will. And that you know that anytime you go to the cupboard, the choices you'll make are good ones for you. That's really more to the point, right? So that you're removing the idea of challenge or struggle, that it's just an automatic kind of thing. When it's healthy eating, batch cooking is great because that's a plan. Because this is, now you know kind of what your week in meals is going to look like. You can consider if you need an accountability buddy. Is there someone else who might take this journey with me and together we'll be a bit stronger? What are going to be the tough spots along the way? I'm going to speak to all of these in a little bit more extended version as we go through. So starting to think in terms of what habits do I maybe need to create? It's, can I break this plan down to a 10-minute per day activity? Something that I can do daily for 10 minutes, no more, and just build that into my day. And through that, start building in increments what I want to achieve. So we know that people who write, we have an author hosting us tonight, of several books that for many people, and it's not one system fits all, but we know that for many writers, it's the daily act that really helps, that sort of sets those wheels in motion for writing to continue and be productive. Who was it? I think it was, it might have been Howie Mandel, might have been another comedian who's, Jerry Seinfeld wrote jokes every day. They may not have been hits, they may not have, caused audiences to be roaring with laughter every single time, but he wrote comedy every day in the height of his career. And it's like, wow, it's kind of hard not to hit some real winners when you're producing on a regular basis like that, right? Certainly, it was necessary for running a marathon. There had to be a commitment, if not every day, to most days of the week of running. That was something I knew I was buying into when I decided to sign on for a marathon. And anybody who wants to learn to run, do any level of distance running, that sort of thing, you're definitely making a commitment for it to happen on a predictable basis. So I'm thinking also of the facilitated meetup. Is there a small step that you can put in place every single day that will build the infrastructure for this to happen? Something to think about. The acronym EAST is one that a friend shared with me. Some of it has overlap with James Clear's work, but ways to sort of create and establish habits. One, the E stands for easy. So if saving money is your thing, nothing like automatic withdrawals from your account day after payday. Pretty straightforward. You don't even have to think about it. It's all done for you. If you're tempted to buy food that you know you don't want to have or don't want to eat or bring into the house, order online, curbside pickup. Keeps you out of the store. And I guess we can thank COVID for that one, because it's certainly become a lot more popular than it was pre-pandemic. You may have heard of people who want to work out daily in the mornings, who sleep in their gym clothes or have them laid out. I'm one who's in the latter camp. I get dressed in my gym clothes. I have no idea what workout I'm going to do. I just get dressed in them, and something will get figured out. That's my MO. And so lots of options around making it easy. Making it attractive. This is a James Clear-ism. He talks about pairing things that you want with things that are already established as habits. So that makes it like, oh, if I already do this thing and I just stick this onto it, that'll make it so much easier, and I'll feel like doing it because it'll just become a new part of my routine. Okay, so or you also add in something that would be considered a reward. So maybe over your lunch, you, instead of just sitting at your desk or not moving, you get out of the building, walk down to the nearby coffee shop, and buy an herbal tea as your reward, and head back to the office. So you've gotten steps in, a little bit of movement, some fresh air out of the four walls, and you know it's lunchtime, and this is something that you can conceivably do on a predictable basis. Being social, so having a social component to it. We do so much better with the support system as a rule. There are always exceptions, but as a rule, when we can tie connections to others, I'm liking the doing yoga while I eat chocolate idea. When we can connect to other people while we're trying to establish new habits or patterns, it makes it so much easier. I would never have run a marathon without a running buddy. Some days we had more than just one but the one running buddy and I did our long, slow runs on the weekends together. It was a standing date for weeks because that was, I think, about a 5-month undertaking to prepare for it. So, I mean, I could hear Gaga in my ear telling me I was on the edge of glory all she wanted. But if I was by myself, I was hurting. It did not feel like glory. I can promise you that. So definitely where you can tie in other people. I have had a little accountability group. We're very informal. There are 3 of us who are more or less more active. In total, I think we're 5 or 6 people, not all women, in Facebook Messenger. We just have created this little group and we chime in almost daily to say, hey, here's what I did today as a workout and here's what's going on with me. It's remarkable how that has been helpful in sustaining behaviors that I think otherwise would have probably gone in the ditch, if I'm honest. So that's really neat. Timing is the T. So we've had make it easy, make it attractive, make it social, and be aware of your timing. So we usually have a best time of the day to do things. I don't know if people are aware of this, but willpower is a finite resource. That kind of rocked my world when I found that out. There are a number of people who've researched this. But I know that if it gets late in the day and I haven't done my workout, it's not going to happen. I have so many decisions to make and choices and directions to go in through my day that I don't have a whole lot of bandwidth left by the end of it for the decision of what to do, nor the energy to work up to actually get the workout done. I'm a morning person for that reason. So some people say, oh no, I just start picking up steam at like 3 o'clock, in which case, absolutely go with it. But you know what time works best for you, and it's something to play around with and explore. Point 4 in this whole process is to expect parts of the process to suck because it will happen. It's not very often that you have the direct, smooth path of real self to ideal self without any hiccups along the way. We can pretty much count on that, especially for these longer haul kinds of undertakings. So, I honestly can't think of a single person I know who just sort of put their head down and said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And lo and behold, here I am. A positive or a popular concept that has emerged out of positive psychology is something called grit. And Angela Duckworth is the author of a book by that title. She's quite an accomplished woman in her own right, has had a few different interesting career paths, and is now a psychologist and studies and writes about grit. She defines this as passion and perseverance toward a desired outcome. Okay, so it's not just being passionate about it, it's about staying the course through the long haul. And, so you can think of a number of them. Saving for a long-term period to, make a big purchase can be seen that way. Learning to play a musical instrument, learning another language, all of these things, they require a certain amount of staying power. Writing a book, I have not had the experience, and Tracy's nodding, I'm not surprised to see that. Grit can be achieved through several means, but the one that Duckworth feels is perhaps the most prevalent or powerful is thinking in terms of a growth mindset. So that work comes to us from Carol Dweck, and she has the most powerful 3-letter word that you'll ever hear, yet. I don't know how to do that yet. That's not something within my capacity yet. And it is a framework that says, but I can get there. or I will be able to get there. So the opposite of growth mindset, just as an FYI, is fixed mindset. This is who I am, take it or leave it. I am who I am, and not in the best possible way. This is, that sort of if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of mentality. So grit is passion and perseverance toward a desired outcome. Okay. So it's like, okay, so I haven't mastered this thing yet, or I seem to be stuck on this concept or this step or this piece of the journey. Then the question becomes, who can help me? What information am I lacking? And you start to tap into, again, the resources that you have. Perhaps you go to your traveling buddy on the journey, if you have one, and explore with them what their solutions might be. But we recognize that just because we haven't achieved this thing today and may not get there tomorrow, that doesn't mean it's impossible. Growth mindset. I am capable of change. I am capable of learning, right? Another way to get past the challenges related to the tough sections of our lasting change is to lean into something called fierce self-compassion. I love this concept. Kristen Neff, she's on your list as well. Hers is a link to the Berkeley Greater Good Center, I believe. And she's got some great stuff around this. So self-compassion is that, just sort of thinking about who you are and how you are with the person that you hold most dear, maybe a best friend, not necessarily a blood relative, but somebody you care deeply about, and that you would never criticize them for being less than who they want to be, or struggling against a particular barrier, perhaps. And taking all of that essence and turning it on yourself, self-compassion, okay? Being as you would be to a best friend to yourself. That's the Nizzero definition, by the way. I don't know that Kristen Neff defines it that way, but that's my understanding of it. So what's fierce self-compassion? Fierce self-compassion is where you enlist the person, your best friend, to take heart and take charge and recognize that capacity in herself, that you can do this, right? You've got this, right? And that's the language now that you're using on yourself. You've decided you really want this thing. You've hit a tough patch. Yeah, that was going to happen. We kind of knew that was coming, in fact. But you've got this. You can do this. So it's that kind of pep talk that we can, in fact, give ourselves. And we very often don't think about it that way. By the way, to add to, it's a nuanced difference, but I love his work too. To really add power to it, it's, okay, Irene, you have no desire to work out this morning, but you know the next right thing to do. You got to get your shoes on and lace them up. And you can do this. So the language I used was my own name and the pronoun you. Adds to the level of impact and likelihood of following through, believe it or not. So this work has been made clear to us by Ethan Kross. He's on your list, and his book called Chatter. I can't recommend that book enough. It is all about that talking that goes on in our heads that makes us question ourselves, second guess what we've decided, it causes us doubt, you name it, and how to mitigate that. Perhaps not necessarily silence the chatter always, because in fact there are times when it's helpful, but how to manage it so that it doesn't derail what we know we want and can achieve. So if you're ever stuck, use your own name. Irene, what do you think you should do in this situation? It's surprising how that jolts you out of your reverie. The fifth point, and I think I'm going to come in just under the wire here. Woohoo. At intervals, you want to be able to take stock of where you are and check in with yourself. How am I doing here? Does my plan, does my desired future state need adjusting? Maybe I'll never be able to bench press my own body weight. Maybe I have to live with that reality. Whose body weight could I adjust this to then, right? Whatever the case may be, there are times when you may decide that I'm going to have to revise. Maybe not. No, I'm pretty clear that I'm getting there. The progress is slow, but I'm getting there. So I'm going to renew and recommit. This is going to happen. I know it, right? And that is a matter of being intentional. So it may be a practice of waking up every day and saying, today, here's what I commit to. I want to establish that this is what I'm going to achieve today and set that as my intention and put my energy toward it and make it happen. Maybe you just need to take stock on a less frequent basis, weekly, monthly, whatever the case may be, but you want to do that at intervals. I think it's a common pattern where we say, well, yeah, of course, that's what I want, without stopping to really think and reflect. And I do think that's a very important part of the process. Does a timeline need to be revised? If you have one, maybe you're just saying, no, I'm just going to keep getting better at this. That's all I'm really looking for. Awesome. I would be really remiss if I didn't also encourage you to celebrate your successes along the way. We, as a culture, are pretty quick to identify where we fall short. We don't tend to spend a lot of time celebrating and sharing our successes. And I think that's unfortunate. I love hearing when people have done great things or achieved great things. It's inspiring to me. So I'm going to pause there. Oh, wow, I did it with 5 minutes to spare. So I think that means we can just get into Q&A a little earlier, unless there are questions about what I said specifically that you'd like me to expand on or clarify or anything like that. And I'm going to pass it back to, I think it's Joanne at this point.
Hi. Thanks, Irene. So much information, and I can tell lots of people were like me, taking a ton of notes. So there was so much. I especially loved the whole idea of grit and the passion and perseverance toward a desired outcome. That was lovely. But also the one, it's not specifically a question that someone came up with, but it made me think, and I thought I would turn it into a question. There was one person who talked about that they have lived with the wrong what for many years. So my question to you would be, so what does somebody do in that situation when they recognize that the reason behind what they're doing is the wrong reason? How do they switch that up?
So I'm a huge fan of value and really inviting people to do whatever they can to explore that. There's so many options, just even online, great values exercises, values exploration exercises. But I really believe that spending any time in thought around that topic is bound to be revealing to someone. So what really matters to me? And, this is really the crux of the work by Simon Sinek as well, that once we know, it's a question of why am I here? What's my purpose? Yeah. And by the way, M in PERMA is meaning. So we need meaning to feel a sense of well-being. So, exploring that is never wasted time. And I think that starts to then help people turn in the direction that they do feel more gratified by. Does that answer your question, Joanne?
Yeah, it does. I think it was just an interesting way of sort of, I guess that person has already made a few leaps and bounds by
Yeah.
even recognizing that. So I just thought it was a really cool comment to have sort of made. And then another one that sort of intrigued me was that somebody talked about that they weren't sure if it was James Clear or BJ Fogg. They wrote about motivation as slippery.
Hmm.
And they thought that was a great way of describing it, but I'm a little bit unclear as to what that means. Can you explain that a little bit better?
Yeah, it's there some days and it isn't others. It's really, so it's an elusive concept, right? I mean, I'm sure we've all had this experience that, we set on a path towards something, and the idea of, staying the course, maybe 4 out of 5 days goes really well. But there's that fifth day, and it may not be at the end of it. It may be somewhere in the middle. It's like, okay, what happened to my motivation? I thought I had it. And there's so many different factors that can contribute to that. But yeah, it's not always something we can count on. It's slippery in the sense that it's elusive, is my understanding of it, at least anyway. And I think that's the unfortunate reality and why we don't always feel 100% gung-ho.
That
I
makes
also
sense.
think it's, just to jump in,
Yeah.
I think slippery is, it's the biggest, it's the biggest obstacle in essence, because when we first start anything, whether it's to save money or whether it's to run the marathon or get a new job, there's either great pain or there's extreme excitement. Most of the things I've had to achieve in my life are never things that can be done in a week. They tend to have a much longer time frame. And I know personally, I struggle with, is this a day that I just pull up my socks and just do it and I don't want to? Or is this a day when I say, like so much of the time in my office, what I'm saying to people is, it's okay to just chill a bit here. It's okay to just sit in this for a bit. It's okay to not have to be so frantic. But it is hard to discern, is this a day that I need off? Or is this the day that I actually need to buckle up and just get what the heck I'm supposed to get done?
Yeah,
I struggle with that myself.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Days that you feel like a house on fire, you're just getting it all done and firing things off left, right, and center. And other days it's like, wow, I have to get dressed. I totally get it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that sort of ties in with another sort of type of question that's come up, which is that someone has recently left a career and now trying to figure out what's next, but they're struggling some days with being okay with not knowing what is next. So how do you sort of battle, or deal with that so that you keep moving forward, that you keep making, the progress that you need to make? What would you suggest for that person?
Oh gosh, so that's a fairly lengthy one. I think it sounds like just the not knowing is the piece that's right now the greatest difficulty, and we are a species that does not like uncertainty and lack of clarity and direction. So it's not something that's easy to give just a quick answer to, but the things that occur to me that are most important would be to sort of reflect on what has helped this person to feel at peace, has helped this person to feel a sense of satisfaction or meaning. And looking to our past is often a way to start to get those hints, sort of special or important moments in life sometimes. And this is a lot of what Cynic would say. If you're really trying to explore who you are and what matters, you're looking at the highlights of your life, and what those high points were. But you may also be looking at low points and what made them low points. So because they also speak to values. So sort of just getting really clear about about what matters. Again, so it so often comes back to values, but also then thinking in terms of what natural talents you already have, what capacities you already have, what directions you may feel pulled in. And there are ways to sort of collate all of that information. I didn't include this in the resources, but if you, and there, I have very specific directions about this, so I'm going to try and just sort of verbalize them for you. If you go to a Google search and type in the word in images, Ikigai, Ikigai, okay, it will come up with a variety of versions of a graphic that gives 4 different ways of capturing things about you. What I'm naturally good at, what I'm passionate about, what the world needs, and in this instance, what I can get paid for. And it's basically looking at a Venn diagram and seeing, okay, so what lives in the sweet spot? What lives in the middle of all of that? That's an exercise that I've found people benefit from as well. Sorry, I didn't include that in the resources, but...
No, that sounds like an interesting one to do. And it actually, a few people have commented since that is something that they're struggling with, that uncertainty, and it's that it is a challenge for them. So I think that was so always great when somebody asks a question that it's going to resonate with more than just them. It comes in happy for others. Then another one that sort of relates to that is if somebody doesn't have an endpoint for something, like in terms of the goal, like a specific amount of weight that they want to lose, how do they stay motivated if they don't have that the big picture of where they want to be with it all?
So I think it is still a matter of getting back to, okay, so why do you want this then? What is it that you hope will be different? What is motivating you when the motivation's there, in essence? And it's a hard thing to do, but keeping that vision of yourself, even though it's going to continue to change and morph and get revised, but the benefits, the outcomes, the capacities that you hope will change. These are, I think, the things to continue to keep front and center. The other trick, and this is another Ethan Cross, the guy from Chatter, trick, is to think of your future self. So I occasionally will do this. I'm struggling against to work out or not to work out, and then I think, okay, so what is the 5 p.m. Irene going to wish I had done?
Oh,
and I kind of go there in my head and I say, yep, I know what she's going to wish. She's going to wish that I had worked out. So I guess I'm going to work out. Think of your future self. And it doesn't have to be far in the future. It can be just later that day. And it's fun how influential that can be.
That's an interesting way of looking at it, actually. I'm going to have to try that one. Would that work with procrastination and self-doubt as well?
Yep. Especially the procrastination one. I think, I don't know that I included him on your list. So procrastination is a funny thing. We think it's about lacking willpower or motivation. Procrastination is actually an issue of emotional regulation. We think that it just feels better to stay here than to do the thing I don't want to do. And that over the long haul, it'll be better just to stay here and not do that thing. When in reality, not doing that thing catches up with us. And we don't feel great about it. So we have in our heads, and this is pretty common, so don't feel bad if you're recognizing this, that we have to like everything. If you refer back to my point 4, sometimes things just suck, we start to recognize that, okay, so right now it's not being fun. Okay, that's the way it is. And one of the most amazing tricks is, beyond recognizing and accepting that I'm not liking this idea right now, and oh gee, I guess I can't say that I really should like everything in my life, just to ask yourself, what is the next right thing I need to do? Don't go beyond it. And so, we go back to the ever popular working out in the morning thing. It's get your shoes on. Like, it's literally that simple. It's not even decide which workout program you're going to do. That comes later. Get your shoes on. Something that puts you into forward movement is one of the best antidotes to procrastination.
I like that. I think that resonates really well for a lot of us, I'm sure. Well, it looks like we've reached the end of our questions. And so again, just really want to thank you and Tracy, who I see in the corner over there on my screen.
I'm in the middle, actually.
Oh, you're in the corner of mine. But just,
too.
yeah, it's just been a really powerful and wonderful session and so much information. And we'll make sure that, we're going to be writing about this session. It will be part of the newsletter on the blog, and also it will be on YouTube. But, we'll make sure that there's ways that if you've missed any of the information that you can access it in a different format at some point. We're getting a lot of thank yous coming in, so I just really want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. And also
It was so good to see everybody. That's why I thank you, Katie. You just put on it's so good to see you. And Tiffany, I haven't seen you for so long. And Shanae, Darcy, everybody, it's just so good to see your faces. And Irene, of course, it's great to see you. And I've been writing notes furiously. That's really hit the spot for me. I've been having a very unmotivated week and feeling bad about myself for feeling unmotivated. And I love it. I really feel like I have some tangible things to move forward with. So I'm deeply grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. And also, we also want to remind everyone that our next Wise Money Talks webinar, again via Zoom, Woman, Wealth, Wisdom, Wild Ideas and New Paradigms, is coming up with Tracy on Saturday, September 25th. From 9:30 to 11 o'clock, and I think you're all going to want to be there. So if you haven't registered already, you might want to do that as soon as you get off the screen. In this inspiring and motivating session, Tracy will share what she has learned about disruption for good, gentleness and generosity, wealth and power, and leading from the heart. If you're, and I've already said that, if you're not already registered, make sure that you do. Tracy, did you want to add anything about that workshop? Oh, she's muted herself.
Just that I'm really looking forward to seeing and interacting and dialoguing with everybody. It's going to be very participatory. We've all been through a lot since the last time. It's been a long time since I taught, and a long time since I've been in front of you. And so I really look forward to us all coming together and like stirring the cauldron. So hopefully I'll get to see you on that Saturday.
Thanks, Tracy. And also, just as another reminder, if you want any more information, see what's coming up with all of our next Wise Money Talks sessions, be sure to go and visit our website, sophiawealthacademy.com, and you'll be able to see events. And we've made some great changes thanks to Aaron and Lindsay. So it's definitely worth going and having a look at the website, and sign up to our newsletter if you already aren't signed up to, because again, it's a way to find out what's going on. We're beefing up the newsletter with a lot more information and tools and quotes and resources. So it's a great opportunity to kind of find out where we're headed, and as we get finance forward, and we want you to come with us for the journey. And also just, you can share that with any friends and family members, that invite them to come and join us as well. And once again, just really want to thank you all for joining us tonight and asking great questions and participating in tonight's session. And we hope to see you again on the 25th. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.